would highly recommend perhaps thinking about a membership or a gift card here to Vidiots. You
Get a
coming
membership.
back. What?
Get a membership.
Get a membership. See, right there. Our audience members are also great members. Thank you. It's so lovely to hear. So we have screenings like this happening through the end of the year and then going into January, and it's just so wonderful to be back in the theater together with each other. For those of you that have been here before, you know this. And for those of you that haven't, I'm just going to tell you, we're like a really fun crowd. So you should be ready for that. That doesn't mean, though, that we talk to our neighbors during the screening. It doesn't mean we have conversations or we check our phones, but it does mean that if you feel compelled to, I don't know, clap or cheer or yell or, you know, interact some way with the screen in a way that makes sense for the film, we highly recommend it. And I would say for any like future screenings that have anything to do with dancing, I also recommend this venue because this becomes a dance film. So just be prepared for that if there's any films coming up of that nature. But something that's very special about this venue and what we're trying, of course, to cultivate not only as a community, is bringing in some very special guests, which I'm sure you're probably very excited for tonight's special guests. You might know him from The Howling, maybe? Yeah. Piranha? Yeah. Okay, obviously The Birds, I think. A personal favorite and a San Francisco classic, Inner Space. Okay, so without further ado, please help me invite up our very special guest this evening, director of the Gremlins, Joe Dante.
It's just like a scene from the movie.
I didn't want to tell them to throw popcorn, but you know, it's very much, you know, please don't do that part of the interaction for the film. Well, Joe, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I'm sorry it took me 6 months to come.
We're honored to have you. Because I'm sure many people, I don't want to give away too much of the film, and I'm sure many people have seen it.
How many people have seen it?
Oh, God. 10 zillion times.
Haven't seen it.
First time. Oh, wow.
Oh, my God.
Wow. You're in for a treat.
See if you're still here at the end.
Well, because we have you this evening, I wanted to start at the beginning, or very broadly, because again, we're a video store, we're a new movie theater, we love the moving image here at Vidiots. Can you just like tell us briefly about what drew you to cinema, what drew you to want to create all of the wonderful films you've made?
Well, I wanted to be a cartoonist, and I spent most of my childhood at Saturday matinees. We used to, it was a double feature, 10 cartoons, and a cereal chapter. And it only cost 25 cents to get in. And the first boy and girl in line got in for free. So the kids would start lining up at 10:30, even though the show wasn't until 1. And I was the only kid in my neighborhood who was there every weekend, no matter what they were playing. I didn't care. You know, it was like, Tarzan, fine. You know, science fiction, fine. Westerns, great. I just loved the idea of seeing movies in a big screen, in the dark, with people. And of course, TV was just coming in there, and so we got old movies on TV, which is great. But it was never quite as satisfying as it was seeing it with your friends. And I remember in 1956, my friend Randy Crawford had his 10th birthday, and his mother bought out the local theater, and we all went to see Moby Dick, which is a rather odd movie to do. But we thought it was great. You know, it had a big giant whale in it, and his name was cool. And they said, it's a classic, it's okay, you can like it. But I just became enamored of the idea of movies. And I never thought I'd end up making them, because I went to a screening of Lord of the Flies in 1963, and I loved the book, and I saw the movie a couple of times, but I started counting the shots. And when I got to 100, I realized I could never make movies because I can't count past 100. When I was a kid, I missed 3rd grade, so my math skills were really terrible. I figured, well, this is just something I'll never be able to do. And as it turned out, I got a chance to go out to California and work for Roger Corman and making trailers. And learning how movies are put together by, you know, and figuring out how the scenes were put together and sort of dismantling them and putting them back. So by the time I got an opportunity to direct my own movie, I actually surprisingly knew what I was doing. And since editors tend to be very closed off and kind of introspective, there's always the thought, well, editors can't make good directors because they're so, they don't like crowds. But in fact, I found that working with other people was very stimulating. In fact, there were a whole lot of people on the crew that were having ideas and we were cross-fertilizing and you know, even for a 10-day cheap movie, it was really exciting. And I thought, boy, you know, I could actually do this. This is actually something that I could do. And it turned out that it was.
Speaking of that editing, you edited your first few features, correct? And was it Gremlins the first feature that you did that you didn't edit?
When you're working for independent studios, they frown on you editing because, for one thing, you know, they can't wait for the movie to be shot before you start editing. So you have to have another editor. So I was always one of the editors. But then they don't like to wait for a whole, you know, 6 months to edit the movie. And so in this case, I did the Twilight Zone movie first. Before I did this. And my editor on that was Tina Hirsch, and she was very good. And so when we came to do Gremlins, we said, well, we'll just have Tina do it. And it was my first studio movie. I had never, you know, been on a studio lot, really. I mean, when I was working for Roger Corman, I was making movies out in the wilderness. But when we, I remember the first day on the Twilight Zone movie, I was on some big stage at Warner Brothers, and a grip comes up to me and he says, see that corner? I said, yeah. I said, Errol Flynn pissed in that corner. Well, I guess I've arrived.
Wonderful. Well, speaking of arriving, how did the Gremlins arrive to you?
Gremlins arrived to me in the mail from Steven Spielberg, who sure had the wrong address. Seriously, I mean, when you gotta remember, when you're working on low-budget films, you really feel like you're apart from the rest of the community. You're not part of the general film run. And it turned out he had seen The Howling, and in fact had hired Hugh Wallace to be an E.T. based on seeing The Howling. And of course, he'd also seen Piranha, which was a rip-off of Jaws. He knew who I was. And so he had sent me the script, which was a spec script, which is a script that's written by a writer who doesn't expect it to get produced, but just wants people to see how well they write, and by Chris Columbus. And Steven found it, and he was starting his new company, Amlo, and he wanted to start with a low-budget horror film, because that's always a very safe way to start. And so he asked me to do it. I was doing Twilight Zone. And so we worked on it for a while, and it became apparent that it wasn't going to be able to be made for very little money because it had all this stuff in it, all these special effects, and creatures and stuff. And so he went to Warner Brothers, and he managed to get backing from them, and they were very happy to have us for a little money. But it was always considered Spielberg's folly at Warner Brothers. They always thought, well, this is, you know, let's let him do it, makes him happy, and make big blockbusters for us. And so there wasn't a lot of understanding of the movie while we were making it. And then when they saw the movie, they were appalled. But they said, the Gremlins are horrible. They blow their nose on the curtains. You've got too many Gremlins.
So those of people that haven't seen the movie, you know that that's not true.
Spielberg said, well, we can cut out all the Gremlins and call it people. Nobody's going to come. And they were very good. They let me have my cut of the movie and we previewed it, and it turned out to be, amazingly, this tremendous preview in San Diego, I think it was. And it was in their lifetime, every director hopes to ever have a preview as good as this was. And even so, they thought, this is great. This is a great movie, except you gotta cut out that scene where Phoebe Cates talks about her father. Of course, that to me sort of summed up the entire tone of the picture. So I didn't want to cut it. And Spielberg said, I don't get it, but if you want to. It turned out to be quite a talking point, to the point where we're actually able to make fun of it in the sequel.
Well, we have to talk about those creatures, the Gremlins, and the Mogwai, you know, and our favorite Gizmo. Can you talk about again, you get this script, I'm so curious, could you talk about the creation of the creatures, like how they came to being and then working with them?
Well, we're sort of inventing the technology. This is really a giant puppet movie. And nobody had done a puppet movie quite like this. I mean, Jim Henson had done a couple of movies, but they weren't quite as demanding as this was going to be. And so Chris Wallace, who designed the creatures based on some designs that were in Chris Columbus's original script, came up with a whole bunch of ideas for how to make these things believable. But the big difficulty was Gizmo, who was this little small creature, and he has to carry the movie. But in the original script, he turned into the bad Gremlin after about 20 minutes, and so it wasn't like he was going to have to carry the picture. But then when Steven saw the designs for Gizmo, which we had based on the color of his dog to get into Lincoln, he said, I think this Gizmo character has really got something. I think he should stick around for the entire movie. He should be the hero's pal. And that turned out to be, I think, in my view, the reason why this picture is still popular today. But for us, it was just this tremendous nightmare because we had this little tiny bucket of bolts. We could only do a couple of things. And now it had to be like the co-star. So we had to frantically revamp how we were going to do it. We had to build giant gizmo heads, and we had to do all sorts of strange things to be able to make him work. And it turned out that it was believable, and it did work, and people really took a shine to the character. And I think that if the movie had been shot the way that it was originally written, and the Gizmo character disappeared, I don't think we'd be talking about it today.
I'm just so curious what you think about how this film is also a Christmas classic. And that's something we're talking about. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Did you ever think that would happen? You're making this horror film and then we all want to screen this?
It is a diehard. Movies that take place at Christmas tend to be called Christmas classics. And this one, because it mixes horror and sentimentality and satire and Christmas, just sort of had this strange path. It was released in the middle of the summer. It was shot in the middle of the summer. So it was not released, it was not a Christmas movie when it was originally put out. But over the years, to everyone's amazement, everybody who ever worked on this movie, because when you work on a movie, you think, well, maybe people will like it for a couple of years and then they'll go on and they'll think about something else. For some reason, this thing has hung on for all of these years, and we're all astonished that, and I think part of the reason is because it is a Christmas movie, and it does have a lot of Christmas stuff in it, and it's one of the things that gives it heart. And so the only idea of, the way a horror movie can work itself into the audience's affection is if it has heart. And so I think this one has sort of stood the test of time.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I'm going to ask you one final question before we get to watch this Christmas classic. We also have the video store, which you had frequented or went to when it was in Santa Monica. So 2 questions about, I would say, maybe some favorite movies or movies that inspired you. Did you think it would tell us about a movie that we might be able to find in the video store, hopefully, that inspired Gremlins? And then maybe a film that you like to watch during the holidays?
Well, on my website, Trailers from Hell, that you may or may not be aware of, we're going to be at Christmas. We're going to do a piece on my favorite Christmas movie, which is the Alistair Sim version of A Christmas Carol, which is, I think, the best Christmas movie ever.
Agreed, right over here.
And also, it is as far as the precedents for Gremlins. I don't think I was thinking consciously of anything in particular except trying to find a way to make this thing work.
That's all right. We'll stick with that. So you all have another Christmas movie that you can watch. Thank you so much, Joe.
But anybody who hasn't seen this movie, you are so lucky to be able to see it in a theater with an audience, because it's an audience picture.
Thank you so much, Joe. We hope to have you back soon. Thank you again for joining us. one big thank you to also our projectionist tonight that's going to make sure that this movie sounds and looks good. So big thank you to Olivia.
Trailers first. Don't worry. We didn't.